Welcome to Woo English. Have you ever asked yourself, what happens when the strongest army in the world runs out of missiles? In this audiobook story, written for English learners like you, we dive deep into a real crisis happening right now. A story of power, fear, and silence, where the United States finds its weapons gone, where China rises without saying a word, and where the world stands on the edge of something big. You will learn English, sentence by sentence, while discovering a true, dramatic story that could change everything. Now, take a deep breath. Chapter 1. The Dinner That Changed Everything. Have you ever seen a superpower run out of missiles? Yes, missiles. The kind that protect cities. The kind that cost millions. The kind that win wars. On the night of July 7th, 2025, something strange happened in Washington, D.C. It looked like a normal evening. Inside a beautiful hall, President Donald Trump was having dinner. His guest? Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel. There were candles, silver forks, soft music. But outside, the world was burning. Russia was bombing Ukraine. Missiles, drones, destruction. And Ukraine? It was asking for help. Again. Suddenly, reporters entered the room. They had one big question. Mr. President, will you send more weapons to Ukraine? Trump stopped eating. He looked at the cameras. Then he said, "Yes, we must help them. Ukraine needs more weapons. They must defend themselves." The reporters wrote their headlines. But behind Trump's words, there was a secret. A dangerous secret. The U.S. couldn't send more weapons. Why? Because they were almost gone, especially one weapon. The Patriot missile. Do you know what a Patriot missile is? It's not just a rocket. It's a guardian. A high-tech, smart missile that flies into the sky and destroys enemy missiles before they land. Ukraine begged for them. They said, "Just give us Patriots. We will protect our cities ourselves." But the U.S. didn't respond. Not because they didn't care. Not because they didn't want to help. But because there weren't enough missiles left. Let that sink in. The strongest military in the world was low on missiles. How? How did this happen? The answer was sitting across the dinner table. Yes, Israel. Over the past 2 years, America had sent hundreds, maybe thousands, of Patriot missiles to help Israel fight off missile attacks from Iran, Hezbollah, and others. The price? Each missile costs $4 million. And once fired, it's gone. You don't get it back. You can't reload it. You just wait for the next one to be made. But here's the problem. It takes months, even a year, to produce a new one. So now, America had a problem. They used too many missiles, and production was too slow. And now Ukraine was asking for help. But there was nothing left to send, just a few missiles, here and there. And those? They were already sitting in a warehouse in Poland. The Pentagon said, "Stop, don't send them. We might need them for ourselves." Yes. The U.S. military, for the first time in decades, was counting every missile it had left. Meanwhile, Russia was watching. China was watching. The world was watching. And inside that dinner room, the president smiled. He promised help. He said everything would be okay. But deep down, he knew. America's arsenal was almost empty. And that was only the beginning. What happens when a superpower runs out of weapons? Can it still protect its allies, or even itself? Let's find out in the next chapter. Chapter 2. The Patriots Are Missing. Can you imagine a soldier with no bullets? Now, imagine a country with no missiles. That country is the United States of America. And the missing missiles? They are not just any missiles. They are Patriots. The most famous, the most powerful, the most wanted air defense missiles in the world. Let's go back a few days before the dinner. In a secret meeting at the Pentagon, generals looked nervous. One man stood up. His name was Steve Feinberg, the Deputy Secretary of Defense. He said, "We have a serious problem. Our stock of Patriot missiles is too low. We need to stop sending them. Immediately." Why? Because the shelves were empty. For years, the U.S. had been sending these missiles to other countries, to Israel, to protect against Iranian rockets, to Ukraine, to stop Russian air attacks, to allies who asked for help. But the truth? America needed them too. And now, it was too late. In Poland, a shipment was waiting. Inside the trucks, 20-plus Patriot missiles, model PAC-3, 20 Stinger systems, 20 air-to-air missiles. That shipment was meant for Ukraine. It was ready to move. But suddenly, it stopped. The order came straight from the Pentagon. "Pause the shipment," they said. Why? Because even 20 missiles were now too many to give away. Think about that. 20 missiles. That's almost nothing for a country like the U.S. But today, 20 is everything. The Guardian newspaper reported, "The U.S. has only 25% of the Patriot missiles it needs to defend its own plans." Yes, only 1/4 of what the military believes it needs. The rest? Used. Gone. Fired in the deserts of the Middle East. Fired to protect friends. Fired too fast, without thinking about tomorrow. And here's the worst part. You can't just go to a store and buy more Patriots. It takes time. Too much time. The company that makes them, Lockheed Martin, is doing its best. This year, they may produce 600 missiles. Next year, maybe 650. But it's not enough. Not for Ukraine. Not for Israel. Not for America. Right now, 19 countries use the Patriot system. Everyone is asking for more. But the U.S. has one rule. The U.S. Army comes first. That means every new missile must go to the American military before any other country gets one. So even if Ukraine pays, even if Europe begs, they must wait. And waiting is dangerous when bombs are falling. The Pentagon made a choice: protect itself or protect its friends. And that choice? It came at the worst possible time. Just as Russia was increasing its airstrikes on Ukraine, just as cities were under attack, just as soldiers were dying, and Ukraine? They couldn't believe it. They said, "Please, just give us a few missiles." But America said, "Not now." And that silence was louder than any explosion. What happens when the strongest army on earth has nothing left to send? What happens when time runs out, but the enemies are still firing? In the next chapter, we'll follow the trail of the missing Patriots and discover who used them, why, and what it cost the world. Stay with us. Chapter 3. Israel's Secret Bill. Some debts are paid in money. Others are paid in missiles. And sometimes the real cost doesn't show until it's too late. Let's rewind the clock. Before the crisis in Ukraine, before the empty warehouses, there was another war. A quieter one. A faster one. A war that did not happen on American soil, but drained American weapons. The place? Israel. For 2 years, Israel was under attack. Missiles came from Iran, from Lebanon, from Gaza, even from Yemen. Every week, rockets filled the sky. Israel needed protection, fast. And America answered. With what? Patriot missiles, thousands of them, fired from underground launchers, sent from secret bases, loaded onto planes, day after day. The U.S. didn't say no. They said, take what you need. But here's the truth. Every missile sent was a missile lost. Let's talk numbers. 1 Patriot. PAC-3 missile costs about $4 million. Now imagine firing 5 in one day. That's $20 million. Gone. In a month, hundreds of millions. And in 2 years, billions. Billions of dollars. And thousands of missiles. Just for one ally. Now, let's be clear. Israel is important to the U.S. They share intelligence. They support each other. They are military partners. But, in trying to protect Israel, the U.S. weakened itself. And no one was watching the clock. No one was checking the shelves. No one asked, what happens when we run out? And here's something even more shocking. The U.S. didn't just give Patriots. They also gave another missile. THAAD. Terminal High Altitude Area Defense. It's even more expensive. Even harder to replace. But it was all part of the deal. Israel needed help, so the U.S. paid the price in weapons. And now the bill has come due. Ukraine is asking for help. Taiwan is worried. The U.S. Army is trying to rebuild. But rebuilding is slow. Very slow. Why? Because the same factories that made Patriots for Israel are now too busy. Too busy trying to replace what was already used. Think about this. A missile takes minutes to launch, but it takes months to build. A country can lose its power before it even knows it's weak. That's what happened to America. By saying yes too many times, by trying to fight everyone's war, they forgot to protect their own future. And where was Israel during all this? They were safe for now. But new enemies were coming. In April 2025, Iran launched a massive strike. It was the biggest yet. And America? It had fewer missiles than ever before. In private, some U.S. generals whispered, "We gave too much, too fast." Others said, "It was the right thing. We protect our friends." But now, America has to ask, who will protect us if war comes to our door? In the next chapter, we go to Poland, where a single shipment of missiles becomes a global headline, and the world learns that the U.S. can no longer afford to give, not because it doesn't want to, but because there's nothing left to give. Chapter 4. The Ghost Shipment. Sometimes, help is so close you can almost touch it, but then it disappears. That's what happened in Poland in the summer of 2025. A shipment was ready. The trucks were parked. The boxes were sealed. Inside those boxes, hope. Hope for Ukraine. Hope for soldiers on the front line. Hope for cities under attack. And inside the hope, real power. Over 20 Patriot missiles. Over 20 Stinger systems. Over 20 air-to-air missiles. These were not small tools. These were life-saving weapons. Weapons that could stop Russian jets. Weapons that could protect power stations, hospitals, and homes. But suddenly, the order came. Stop. Don't move the shipment. The decision came from high up, from the Pentagon. Why? Because America was afraid. Yes, afraid. The U.S. military looked at its shelves and saw they were almost empty. They didn't want to say it out loud, but inside closed rooms, the truth was clear. We may not have enough missiles left to defend ourselves. And so, the shipment stayed in Poland. Trucks full of weapons, just sitting, waiting, doing nothing as people in Ukraine were dying. Can you imagine the frustration? Ukrainian soldiers knew the missiles were there. They just couldn't touch them. They begged for help. They said, "We don't need much. Just send these, please." But Washington stayed silent. They didn't say no. They didn't say yes. They said nothing. And silence? It can be louder than words. Let's pause for a second. This wasn't a massive shipment. In war, 20 missiles is not a lot. It's a drop in the ocean. But in 2025, that drop meant everything. Because America's reserves were so low, even one missile was important. And Patriot missiles? They had become the most valuable weapon on Earth. Now, imagine this. You are in Ukraine. You hear the sirens, you run to a shelter. You pray the next missile doesn't hit your building. And you know, there are 20 Patriots in Poland that could help, but they're not coming. How would you feel? Angry? Confused? Betrayed? That's exactly how Ukrainian leaders felt. And they weren't alone. Even Europe was shocked. Germany called Washington. Poland asked questions. The European Union said, "If the U.S. can't send them, let us buy them." But it wasn't about money. It was about availability. You can't buy something. That doesn't exist. Meanwhile, inside the Pentagon, one man said something strange. He looked at a map. He pointed at the Middle East, then at Europe, then at China. And he said, "Every missile we send today is a risk for tomorrow." That was the new fear in Washington. Not just Russia, not just Ukraine, but China. Because in the shadows, China was building missiles, silos, warheads, and America was watching trucks in Poland, afraid to let them go. President Trump said nothing at first. He let the Pentagon speak. They said, "We are reviewing our capabilities." They said, "We can't help everyone." But those words were cold. Too cold. And then came the news that changed everything. Russia launched its biggest airstrike yet, Over 500 drones and missiles, all in one night. Ukraine was under fire, and the patriots in Poland still sitting like ghosts. So, what happened next? Did America finally send the shipment? Did Ukraine get the help it needed? Or did someone else take those missiles? The truth is, even in times of war, politics decides everything. Weapons don't move by themselves. They need signatures. They need agreements. They need courage. And in 2025, courage was in short supply. Can a superpower still lead the world when it's too afraid to open a truck? And what happens when the ghosts of war come knocking again? In the next chapter, we'll follow the silence back to Beijing and find out what China was doing while America was standing still. Stay tuned. Chapter 5. China's Great Silence. Not every war begins with noise. Some begin with silence. A silence so deep, it hides something dangerous. That's what China was doing in 2025. While the world watched Ukraine, while America counted its last missiles, China was quietly building. No headlines, no speeches, no shouting generals, just activity. Underground, behind fences, far from cameras. But what was China building? Not roads, not airports, not hospitals. No. Missiles, silos, and nuclear power. In early 2025, the Pentagon released a report. The words were calm, but the message was not. China is preparing the largest nuclear expansion in its history. That's not a rumor. That's a fact. From the U.S. Department of Defense. And it wasn't just about how many missiles. It was about how fast. Let's look at the numbers. A few years ago, China had about 350 nuclear warheads. Now, they are racing toward 1,000, maybe more, before 2030. That's triple the old number. And how? By building silos in the desert. Yes, giant underground launch sites, hidden in the sands of China. Most are in a place called Gansu Province. Flat, dry, remote. Perfect for building something no one can see. Some silos are real, others are fake, to confuse satellites. Smart, right? China is playing a long game. They want to protect their secrets and shock the world when the time comes. But why now? Why is China building so fast? Because they see something. They see America is weak. They see the U.S. stopping missile shipments. They see empty shelves. They hear silence in Washington. And they ask themselves, if not now, then when? There's another reason. For years, China followed a special rule. It was called no first use. That means we will never launch nuclear weapons unless we are attacked first. It sounded peaceful. It made China look calm, responsible, safe. But now that they're building more warheads, more silos, faster systems, people are asking, has China changed the rules? Maybe they don't believe in no first use anymore. Maybe they're thinking about a first strike, a hit so fast, so powerful. The enemy has no time to respond. Scary, right? But possible. There's more. These new Chinese missiles are not normal. Some can launch from underground. Some can carry multiple warheads. Some can reach any U.S. city in minutes. Yes, minutes. And while America is still debating, still reviewing stockpiles, still trying to restart factories, China is already stacking weapons. Fast, quiet, focused. One U.S. general said, "While we talk, China builds." And here's the most shocking part. Many of China's military factories, they don't look like military at all. They look like civilian companies. Factories for toys, offices for electronics, research labs for energy. But behind those walls, missile parts, nuclear tests, launch programs, it's like a magician's trick. Look left, while the real trick is on the right. So, what does this mean? It means a new kind of danger. Not loud, not obvious, but real. A silent race, a secret buildup, and one day, maybe soon, silence will break. Because while America was helping others, China was helping itself. And now, it may be too late to catch up. Can the world stop a war if it doesn't even hear it coming? And if China strikes first, who will strike back? In the next chapter, we'll go inside the Pentagon, where fear is growing, options are shrinking, and America must decide, rebuild fast or fall behind forever. Stay tuned. Chapter 6. The Thousand-Headed Beast. Sometimes danger doesn't wear a uniform. Sometimes it hides underground with 1,000 heads. That's what the U.S. now calls it, the thousand-headed beast. And it lives in China. Let's be clear. We are not talking about tanks. We are not talking about ships. We are talking about nuclear weapons. Big, powerful, world-ending. In 2020, China had around 350 nuclear warheads. By 2025, it was racing toward 1,000. And by 2030, maybe double that, maybe more. No one knows the final number. And that's what makes it terrifying. But it's not just the number. It's the speed. It's the planning. It's the style. China is not building these missiles for show. It's building them to use, if necessary. And it's doing it faster than anyone expected. In one secret report, a U.S. intelligence officer wrote, "China is building more silos than we ever imagined. Over 300 new missile bases in the desert, many already armed. Silos are like nests for missiles. Once you load them, they wait. silent, cold. Ready, they can launch within minutes. That means China now has the ability to strike first, and strike hard. And the new Chinese missiles? They're not normal. They can carry multiple warheads. So if one missile is launched, it can release 3, 5, or even 10 separate bombs, each going to a different city. Imagine that. One missile. 10 targets. No time to react. That's what makes it a beast. The U.S. still has more total nuclear weapons, around 1,500 active. But there's a problem. American weapons are spread out around the world. They're in Europe. They're in Asia. They're on submarines and planes. And many are old. They need upgrades. They need maintenance. They need time. But time is something the Pentagon doesn't have anymore. Because the Chinese beast is not just big, it's fast. One general said, "It's not the size of the arsenal. It's the speed of the builder." And China is building like a machine. Some missiles come from civilian factories, some from hidden bases, some from unmarked trucks. It's hard to track, hard to stop, hard to believe. The U.S. military is now racing to respond. They're calling for more funding, faster production, new technology. But factories take time. Skilled workers are limited, and the supply chain? Still broken from COVID. Still slow, still weak. Meanwhile, China keeps moving. Each month, another silo opens. Each week, another missile is tested. And each day, the U.S. asks, "Are we still ahead? Or has the beast already passed us?" There's another worry. China isn't alone. Russia is watching. North Korea is testing. Iran is preparing. Even Japan and South Korea are thinking, should we build our own nukes? Because if the U.S. cannot protect us, maybe we protect ourselves. It's a dangerous question. Because once everyone wants nukes, there is no going back, no safety, no trust, no winner, just fear. The Pentagon is now warning the White House. We must act. We must invest. We must prepare for a future where China may no longer be behind us, but ahead. But what if it's already too late? What if the 1,000-headed beast is not just coming? What if it's already awake? Can America rebuild fast enough to stop the beast? Or will the silence of today become the explosion of tomorrow? In the next chapter, we'll enter the Pentagon's war room, where generals face a terrifying truth. They may not be ready for the next war. Stay with us. Chapter 7. The Pentagon's Nightmare. What do you do when the strongest army in the world feels weak? What do you do when your weapons are almost gone and your enemies are growing stronger? That was the question inside the Pentagon in 2025. And the answers were not easy. Deep in Washington, D.C., in a building with no windows, top military leaders met. They sat around a long table, maps on the walls, numbers on the screens, coffee in their hands. But no one was relaxed, because the numbers were bad. Very bad. General Harris, a senior commander, stood up. He spoke slowly, clearly, carefully. Our stockpiles are low. Artillery shells, missiles, even bullets. Some of our units may not have enough for a long war. Everyone listened. No one spoke, because they already knew. This was the nightmare they didn't want to say out loud. Let's look at the facts. The war in Ukraine took more than just money. It took millions of rounds of ammunition. It took thousands of missiles. And the U.S. gave them. Not just to Ukraine, but to Israel, to Taiwan, to NATO allies. Every time someone asked, the U.S. said, yes. But now there wasn't much left to give. Some weapons were down to dangerous levels. The 155mm artillery shells used every day in Ukraine were almost gone. Stinger missiles? Hard to replace. Patriot missiles? We already know the story. And these aren't just numbers. These are the tools that defend lives and win wars. Why is this happening? One word: production. The U.S. never expected a long war. Its factories were not ready. Its workers were too few. Its systems were too slow. To make one missile, it can take months. To refill all the stockpiles, years. Meanwhile, generals worry about something bigger: China. If war breaks out near Taiwan, will the U.S. have enough weapons to respond? Will they have time to send help? Will their own forces be ready? General Harris said it clearly. If we fight China tomorrow, we may not be ready. We may run out before they do. Inside the Pentagon, another man, Colonel Davies, added, "This is not just about weapons. This is about trust. Our allies trust us to lead. But what happens if we can't?" That question hit hard, because allies like Poland, Japan, Germany, they all depend on American power. If that power disappears, what comes next? Congress was now involved. Politicians were angry. They demanded answers. They asked, where did the money go? Why didn't we rebuild faster? What if a war starts next month? But yelling didn't fix anything. The Pentagon made a plan, a long one. It included hiring more workers, opening more factories, asking Congress for billions in emergency funding, creating a missile priority list for urgent production. But there was one problem. Time. Time was running out. Enemies were not waiting. Russia was attacking. China was building. And America? Still preparing. Some experts called it the worst readiness crisis in 40 years. One retired general said, "We lost focus. We gave too much. And now we are exposed." In the middle of all this, President Trump was quiet. Too quiet. He didn't speak to the press. He didn't tweet. He didn't even call his generals. Was he waiting? Or was he worried too? One night, inside the Pentagon, a young officer whispered to her colleague, "What if the next war starts before we finish rebuilding?" He didn't answer. He just stared at the map and the red circles around Taiwan. Can a superpower defend the world if it can't even defend itself? And what if tomorrow's war comes today? In the next chapter, we'll fly across the ocean to Europe, where allies are asking one terrifying question. Can we trust America anymore? Stay tuned. Chapter 8. Europe feels the fear. What happens when your protector looks tired? What happens when the shield you trust begins to crack? In 2025, that's exactly how Europe felt. For years, European countries believed in one thing: America will protect us. In times of peace, in times of war, in every crisis, America would lead. But now the strongest army in the world was low on weapons, and Europe was starting to panic. Let's visit Poland, a country close to Ukraine. A country that still remembers Soviet tanks and Russian threats. When the U.S. stopped the missile shipment in July, Poland was shocked. They called Washington and asked, "Why are you keeping missiles in Poland, but not sending them to Ukraine?" No clear answer came. And that silence, it was scary. In Germany, the fear was different. Germany is rich. It has factories. It can pay. So German leaders offered a deal. They said to President Trump, "Let us buy the Patriot missiles. We'll pay the full price. We'll send them to Ukraine ourselves." Trump listened, then smiled. But his answer? "Why don't you send your own Patriot batteries? You already have some. Use those." Germany didn't expect that. They replied, "We've already sent more Patriots than the U.S." And it was true. Germany had helped Ukraine more than many others. Now, even Germany was running low. In France, the mood was colder. Leaders there asked a hard question. Is America still reliable? Not because they hate the U.S., but because they saw the facts. The U.S. was not delivering. The U.S. was pulling back. And the U.S. president didn't seem in a hurry. In the Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, the fear was louder. These are small countries, next to Russia, always watching the border. They've trusted America for years. But now they were asking, What if Russia attacks us? Will America have weapons to send? Or will they say, "Sorry, our shelves are empty"? Let's be honest, Europe has depended on the US for too long. Most European armies are small. Their budgets are tight. Their missile supplies are limited. They always believed NATO means America will save us. But NATO only works if America is strong. If America is weak, then what? This crisis was not just about weapons. It was about trust. Trust between allies. Trust between leaders. Trust between continents. And that trust was breaking. In a meeting in Brussels, one European official said, "We are entering a new world. We must prepare to defend ourselves without waiting for Washington." A strong statement, a scary thought. Meanwhile, Russia was watching, smiling, because every moment of doubt in Europe was a gift to Moscow. If America hesitates, if Europe argues, then Russia grows stronger. Some countries began making new plans. Poland started building its own missile systems. Germany increased its military budget. France pushed for a European defense force. But all of this takes time, and war doesn't wait. In private, European leaders whispered, "This is not about NATO anymore. This is about survival." And here's the dangerous part. Some are thinking about nuclear weapons. Yes, even in Germany, even in Japan, voices are rising. They say, if we can't trust others, maybe we need nukes, too. That's the new fear. A world where every country wants its own bomb. Because trust is broken. Because allies are uncertain. Because the protector is no longer strong. Can Europe build its own shield in time? Or will it be too late when the next threat comes? In the next chapter, we return to Washington, where one phone call changes everything. A call between Trump and Putin. And what happens after will shake the world. Stay with us. Chapter 9. Trump's Turning Point. One phone call, one moment, and everything changed. It was July 3rd, 2025. President Donald Trump sat alone in the White House. No press, no advisors, just him and a phone. He was waiting for someone. Someone powerful. Someone dangerous. Vladimir Putin. The war in Ukraine was getting worse. Cities were burning. Missiles were falling. people were dying. Ukraine had asked again and again, "Send us more weapons. Send us patriots." But the U.S. said nothing. The Pentagon was worried. The shelves were empty. And the president was silent. Until now. The call began. Trump picked up the phone. Putin's voice came through. Cold, calm, confident. For 1 full hour, the two men spoke. About the war, about the world, about power. Trump tried to be firm. He said, "This must stop. You're pushing too far." Putin didn't care. He said, "We will do what we must. No one will stop us." And then the line went dead. The call ended. No agreement, no progress, no peace. A few hours later, the sky over Ukraine turned black. Russia launched its biggest airstrike since the start of the war. More than 500 drones and missiles flew through the night. They hit power plants. They hit apartment buildings. They hit hope. Trump was shocked. He had just spoken to Putin. And this attack felt personal, an insult, a message. And Trump heard it loud and clear. He was no longer Putin's friend. Not after this. The very next day, Trump called Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine. The two leaders spoke for 40 minutes. Zelensky sounded tired, but determined. He said, "We are still standing, but we need your help." Trump replied, "This wasn't my decision. I never told the Pentagon to stop the weapons." Zelensky was surprised. He asked, "Then who gave the order?" Trump said, "I don't know, but I'm fixing it." And for the first time in weeks, there was hope. After the call, Trump held a press conference. The cameras rolled. The room was full. Trump looked serious. He said, "We will send more weapons to Ukraine. They must defend themselves. And we will help." Reporters asked, "What about the shipment in Poland? The Patriots? The Stingers?" Trump smiled, but didn't answer directly. He said, "Let's just say, good things are coming." Inside the Pentagon, things began to move. The missile shipment in Poland was unlocked. New orders were written. Old plans were updated. Trump had changed his mind. And that meant everyone else had to follow. But there was still one problem: the numbers. The U.S. could only send 10 Patriot missiles. Just 10, because that's all they had. And 10 missiles? That's not enough to change a war. But it was enough to send a message to Ukraine. You are not alone. A message to Russia. We are still here. Still, some people were confused. Why only 10? Why not 20 or 30? Germany asked again, "Can we buy more and send them ourselves?" Trump said, "Why don't you use your own batteries first? The conversation got tense. Everyone wanted more missiles. But the truth was simple. There were no more. Trump also made a deal with Europe. He said, "You pay for the weapons. We send them. You deliver them to Ukraine." Europe agreed. They were happy to pay. But again, money wasn't the problem. Production was. Factories couldn't work fast enough. Time was running out, and the war was moving too fast. So now the world watched. The U.S. had finally acted, but maybe too late. Russia wasn't slowing down, and China was still silent, but watching everything. Can one decision fix a broken system? Or was Trump's turning point already too late? In the next chapter, we dive into the NATO gamble, where money, politics, and panic come together, as Europe races to save a war it may no longer control. Chapter 10. The NATO Gamble. What do you do when your most powerful friend has nothing left? You pay. You plan. You hope it works. This is the story of NATO's gamble. After Trump agreed to send a small number of Patriot missiles, Europe understood something important. America was still a friend, but no longer a supplier. Not in the same way, not in the same speed, not in the same strength. So NATO had to move. Fast. In a meeting in Brussels, European leaders came together. They didn't smile. They didn't shake hands. This wasn't a celebration. It was a crisis. And everyone knew it. Germany spoke first. Chancellor Scholz said, "We are ready to pay. If America sends the weapons, we will cover the cost." France agreed. So did Poland, the UK, and others. It was a bold offer. Billions of dollars, ready. Cash on the table. Trump liked the deal. He said, "Good. We'll sell the weapons to NATO. You deliver them to Ukraine." Simple, right? But there was one big problem. A problem no one could solve with money. There weren't enough weapons to sell. The factories in the U.S. were already working at full speed. But full speed was still too slow. Building a Patriot missile takes months. Building a battery system takes even longer. And the demand was out of control. Every country wanted Patriots. Every country wanted fast delivery. But there was a line, a waiting list, and NATO was near the back. Why? Because the U.S. Army takes first priority. That's the law. Even so, NATO made the order. Dozens of missiles, several battery systems, support equipment. It was a massive contract. And the price? Over $10 billion. But still, the real cost wasn't money. It was time. And in war, time is the most dangerous currency. Meanwhile, Ukraine was running low. Their 6 Patriot batteries were active, but their missile supply was shrinking. Each attack from Russia, Each drone from Iran used up more and more of Ukraine's air defense. Zelensky called again. He said, "We don't need words. We need missiles." NATO replied, "They're coming." But no one said when, because no one knew. Inside NATO, some leaders asked, "Can we build our own missiles in Europe?" The answer? Maybe, but not soon. It would take years to design, test, and produce. So for now, Europe still needed America, even if America was tired, even if America was late, even if America had only a few missiles left. This created tension. Poland blamed Germany. Germany blamed Washington. Everyone blamed the system. But the system couldn't shoot down missiles. Only patriots could. And so, NATO made a second move, a dangerous one. They began looking at older weapons, missiles from the Cold War, systems from old stockpiles, anything that could work, even for a few weeks. It wasn't ideal, but war is never ideal. Behind closed doors, some NATO officials whispered, "We are not ready, not for Russia, and definitely not for China." But what choice did they have? They had to act. They had to risk. They had to gamble. NATO's gamble was simple. Spend big. Trust America. Hope the missiles arrive before it's too late. But hope is not a strategy. And war does not wait. Can NATO's billions stop a storm that's already here? Or is the alliance just buying time while the clock keeps ticking? In the next chapter, we go behind the scenes, where factories are racing, generals are waiting, and one old truth becomes clear. You can fire a missile in seconds, but you can't build one overnight. Stay tuned. Chapter 11. The Race with No Rules. Once there were rules, treaties, limits, red lines. But in 2025, all of that disappeared. Now, the world is in a new race, a race with no rules. For decades, countries tried to stop nuclear weapons from spreading. They signed agreements. They held meetings. They shook hands in front of cameras. The goal was peace, or at least control. But today, those papers are just memories. Because now, everybody wants more. More bombs, more missiles, more power. Let's look at the map. Russia keeps testing new weapons. It says to the West, "Don't get close, we're ready." North Korea fires missiles almost every month. Some land near Japan. Some fall into the ocean. They don't ask permission. They don't give warnings. They just shoot. And China? We already know the story. Hundreds of silos. Thousands of warheads coming. And no one knows the final plan. But here's what's new. China is changing its language. Before, it said, "We will never strike first." Now, silence. And silence is dangerous. Even U.S. allies are getting nervous. Japan is thinking, do we need our own nukes? KR South Korea is asking the same thing. Even Germany, a peaceful country, is having quiet conversations. If America cannot protect them, then what? What do you do when your protector is tired? In secret, many countries are preparing. They are buying missiles. They are testing systems. They are training soldiers for a kind of war they hoped would never come. A nuclear war. Let's go back to the U.S. Factories are running day and night. But it's not enough. Every missile takes time. Every battery needs parts. And every delay is a risk. One general in the Pentagon said, "We are no longer ahead. We are just trying not to fall behind." A scary sentence. Because for years, America was the leader. Now, it's a runner in a crowded race. A race it didn't plan for. A race with no finish line. And this race is different. No rules. No judges. No shared goals. Just power. Just fear. Just speed. The world is changing. Fast. And not just the big players. Iran is watching closely. They say their nuclear program is peaceful, but intelligence reports say otherwise. Secret tests, hidden labs, quiet progress. And there's another problem. When powerful countries build more weapons, smaller countries follow. It's like a chain reaction. If one builds, another copies, then another. And soon, no one is safe. This is not like the old Cold War. Back then, the U.S. and the Soviet Union had a balance. It was tense, but it was clear. Now, too many players, too many secrets, too much pride, and not enough trust. People ask, is this the beginning of World War III? We don't know. But one thing is clear. The world is now in a nuclear arms race, and no one is stopping it. Not the UN. Not the treaties. Not the leaders. Everyone is moving fast. And here's the truth. You can build a missile in a year, but you can destroy a city in a minute. That's the reality. That's the danger. That's the race. Who will win in a race with no finish line? And what happens when someone finally pulls the trigger? In the final chapter, we return to the edge, where Taiwan watches, Ukraine bleeds, and the world stands still, waiting for the first move. Stay with us. Chapter 12. The World on the Edge. The world is quiet, too quiet, like the moment before a storm, like a breath held too long. Everyone is waiting. In Ukraine, the war continues. Cities are broken. Families live in shelters. Soldiers fight without rest. They still hope for help. They still believe in the West. But every day, that hope gets smaller. The missiles? They're coming, but slowly. Too slowly. In Taiwan, the air is tense. Chinese ships sail nearby. Chinese jets fly close. Beijing says, "We are only doing exercises." But Taiwan knows better. They know it's not a game. It's a warning. And what if China attacks? Will America be ready? Will Japan help? Will Europe care? Or will Taiwan become the next Ukraine? In Washington, leaders are worried. The shelves are still low. The factories are still behind. And the questions? They're getting louder. Are we ready for a second war? Can we fight in Asia while still helping Europe? What if the missiles run out again? In the Pentagon, a general looks at two maps. One shows Ukraine. The other shows Taiwan. He says, "We cannot fight two wars, not at the same time, not today." And that's the fear. Because Russia isn't stopping, China is getting faster, and North Korea is watching everything. Even in Israel, leaders are asking, will the U.S. protect us again, or has the moment passed? Everyone wants support. Everyone wants protection. But America? America is tired. Across the ocean, Europe is still building. Germany is making tanks. France is testing drones. Poland is buying everything it can find. But building takes time. Time they may not have. And so the world stands on the edge. One wrong move, one accident, one spark, and the fire could start. This is not science fiction. This is not a movie. This is real. This is the result of years of war, fear, and delay. Remember what we learned. America gave too much, too fast. China built silently and fast. Russia saw weakness and attacked. NATO paid billions, but waited too long. And now? Now the world is watching the sky, waiting. There's a phrase they say in the military. If you want peace, prepare for war. But what if you're not prepared? What if your weapons are low, your leaders are slow, your enemies are fast? What then? The truth is, we don't know. No one does. All we know is this. The world has entered a new era. An era of fear. An era of silence. An era of uncertainty. Missiles can now cross oceans in minutes. Drones can attack without pilots. Artificial intelligence can choose targets. And trust? Trust is disappearing. Between countries, between leaders, even between allies. One diplomat in the United Nations said, "We are closer to global conflict than any time since World War II." And that was not an exaggeration. So now we wait. We hope. We rebuild. We pray that the first missile never comes. But if it does, who will be ready? Who will respond? And who will survive? The world is on the edge, and the question is no longer if, but when. This was the final chapter of The Empty Arsenal, when superpowers lose their weapons. Thank you for listening with Woo English, where real stories help you learn real English. Stay curious, stay prepared, and stay learning. We'll see you in the next story.